The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRCMedia, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Thank you for joining us here in FRCMedia. I'm Keith Tebow. This week, Steward Health, which owns St. Anne's Hospital here in Fall River, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. There's a lot of angst over that move and what it means for patients of St. Anne's and also here in Fall River. We're going to talk the legal side of bankruptcy, and please be joined by attorney Stephen Sabra. Stephen has joined us many times for other legal issues. Steve, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Keith. Happy to be here.
A lot of people will hear the word bankruptcy and they'll hear words like Chapter 11, Chapter 7, different types of bankruptcy. What are the differences? And Steward has filed for Chapter 11. So talk a little bit about the differences.
Well, Chapter 11 is generally for businesses, and it's a reorganization. So it's not a closing down, so to speak. Chapter 7 often used for individuals where you file Chapter 7 and you wipe out all your debts. Individuals have also Chapter 13, which is more of a reorganization as well. But we've all seen businesses file for Chapter 11, and it's an ability. It allows them to really have the ability to sort of slow things down and try to negotiate some of the issues that have caused them to file for Chapter 11 in the first place.
Yeah. So, Steward has filed for Chapter 11. It actually happened as we're recording this here on a Monday. I guess what's next? What's the timeline? What's expected to happen moving forward?
I guess the first thing, and what I should have mentioned earlier, was that when you file for bankruptcy, it creates an automatic stay. So what does that mean? That means that if you are being sued, it stops that process. If there was a foreclosure or anything like that, the process stops as soon as you file bankruptcy, which then allows the person that's filed some breathing room to kind of resolve some of these issues and try to move forward. Now, as far as the timeline goes, what's going to happen next? Well, what Steward had to do when they filed bankruptcy, they have to list their assets and they list their liabilities. They also list all their creditors and the amounts that are owed, of course. The timeline is, generally speaking, they have 120 days from the time they file to come up with a plan. So they're called, Steward in this situation is called a debtor in possession. They continue to operate the business, but they have to come up with a plan as to how are they going to get cash, how are they going to deal with all these creditors, who's going to get paid, how are they going to get paid, how much are they going to get paid, and that plan that they create then has to be approved by the creditors as well as finally the bankruptcy court judge, and then they comply with the plan, and during this time the business continues on. So in our case with St. Anne's Hospital, the patients would continue to be seen, the employees would continue to be paid, and then this process would go on until they came up with this plan, and then it would depend on what the plan was as to what was going to happen in the future beyond that 120 days.
Yeah. A lot of people will probably say that, the things that you mentioned that's going to be taking place over the next 120 days should be something that Steward should have been doing right along, coming up with plans and making sure that, they pay their debts and do well by their creditors. What type of oversight now is involved in this with the federal bankruptcy court? And what role will they play to make sure that these steps are taken? Obviously, there was no oversight before. Now, because of this bankruptcy filing, there's more oversight. Talk about that.
The oversight, I guess, starts at the top with the judge. There's going to be certain timelines, like in any case in litigation, and there's also be a U.S. trustee that's appointed to oversee what's going on, and there's incentive, right? There's incentive for Steward to move forward on this on some kind of plan, because if they don't, then after the 120 days or whatever possible extension they could get from the 120 days, it would be up to now creditors to come up with a plan that might not be the type of plan that Steward wants or Steward would like. So they've got some Steward has some incentive to move forward on this, and the oversight will be also by attorneys that are representing the creditors, because there's apparently 100,000 creditors, or a large number of creditors, and they're going to have legal counsel. They're going to want to know how is my client getting paid? How is this going to work? So there's going to be a lot of pressure to get this thing resolved one way or the other, whether it means selling certain assets to get cash to pay creditors, or selling all the assets and ending the business.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Governor Healy today spoke out about what the state is doing in terms of, keeping track of what's happening with this bankruptcy. Does a state government at all in a case like this have any input? Can they lend any input? Do they have any standing, I guess, at all in something like this, based on the fact that I'm going to call St. Anne's and Steward an anchor institution, something that really impacts the residents of the Commonwealth?
Well, you got to remember, Steward is a private company, so the real oversight is with the bankruptcy court, the U.S. trustee, and really the creditors. There are certain regulations in healthcare, and I'm not familiar with all those regulations, but that would allow some oversight by the state. I think, for example, recently Steward was trying to sell some group of physicians to another company called Optum, and the state, I believe, has to have some kind of final approval of that. So that's an example of some oversight, but they have more oversight with the nonprofit hospitals than with the for-profit hospitals, because a not-for-profit, there are a number of regulations that the state has in reporting requirements, which is different from a private company. But now, with this bankruptcy filing, Steward's not going to be able to hide what their assets are, what their liabilities are, more importantly, and people will see. There'll be some more transparency. But I think the Commonwealth has kind of a limited role in how much they can dictate how this is going to end.
Yeah. Steward is based in Texas, and they filed their bankruptcy with the federal bankruptcy court in Texas. Are there bankruptcy districts, federal districts, as there are in the criminal courts in terms of federal courts? And is there any reason why someone in bankruptcy may file in a different district if there's some judges that may be favorable or unfavorable to their cause?
There are different districts. It's very similar to the federal court that we're used to in Boston, the First Circuit. There's bankruptcy districts all throughout the United States. This one got filed in Texas because their headquarters is in Texas. There could have been another reason that the bankruptcy court in Texas maybe is more favorable to business, but I really have no idea whether whether they are or not more favorable to business. I mean, it does happen. Sometimes people file lawsuits in Delaware because of certain laws in Delaware that might favor one side or the other, and it happens the same way in litigation sometimes, that cases that are that are national issues sometimes get filed in a particular jurisdiction because of the makeup of the court in that particular district.
Yeah. Let me ask you finally, if I can have you take out your crystal ball. You said that after 120 days, which I think will push us into close to the end of summer, 4 months from now, what's the likelihood that Steward may or may not delay? Just looking at the fact of the importance of, again, this whole situation, a healthcare outlet, many people rely on that. So are you looking for possibly, having some sort of finality around that 120 days just because of the impact it could have here in this region?
You can kind of argue it both ways. I think from one standpoint, um, it would be important for Steward to get their plan together within 120 days because they would have more say over what that plan is going to entail. Because if they don't get it done within 120 days, and then they don't get an extension, then you'll have a situation where the creditors will come up with their own plan, which might not be as favorable to Steward as they would like. So that's some incentive there. On the other hand, this seems to be much more complicated than maybe some other Chapter 11 bankruptcy because of the healthcare issue, because of all the property being sold to this other outfit, and then these lease payments, and all the creditors. So, that kind of dictates maybe it'll go beyond 120 days. So it's really hard to know. But I think within the first couple of months, you'll have some idea that whether this is going to get dragged on for a long time or whether it's going to move a lot quicker. And certainly you've got Steward has a lot of pressure from, at least in our state, to move this forward.
Yeah. All right, Attorney Steven Sabra, as always, thank you for your time. I'm sure we'll check in over the next few months to get some updates. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
And thank you for joining us here in FRC Media. Have a great day.